Okay, so hello, and here I am today with Jenny Ferry, who has a very interesting job, and I'm really looking forward to talking to her about her soul sex work and her sex coaching and women's empowerment and the 15-minute orgasm. So we'll just jump right into it. So hi, Jenny.
Hi, Roseanne. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, my pleasure. So
Oh,
let's just start like at the
sure.
beginning. Tell me what you do and what is soul sex.
Yeah, I that's a big good question.
Okay.
What I love to say is there's some motivation underneath. So I really would like to talk about that and let your viewers feel a little bit of that because this really generated from a place of my own personal journey over the last, gosh, the course of my lifetime. And one of the things that I experienced, a significant experience for me, was a lot of alone time, a lot of disconnection in my life, and a lot of not having intimacy. And out of that really was born this journey to wholeness that so many of us are on our awakening journey. And at the same time, my portal happened to be sex. That was my safe place. And so how that translates is I feel as if I'm it says on my website I'm a coach, and that's what you can tell your listeners. But really, I'm a facilitator for people to find the divine within themselves, to bring their wholeness to their sex and to their relationships, and create authentic intimacy and connection. As you know, I have a book that I'm writing right now, Soul Sex: Creating the Conscious Connection You Crave, and that'll be out probably in the fall of 2013. But the whole point being, there's a roadmap. Like, we don't have these messages in our culture, in our society, around creating conscious connection. It's really piecemeal for many of us on our awakening journey. So that's sort of the big, broad, right, answer. And then what that looks like, sort of where the rubber meets the road, it's I run public workshops. So heading to Montreal, hopefully in early 2013. I'd love to see
Hmm.
you and be able to facilitate that. But public workshops across the U.S. and Canada, and then I work with individuals all over the world. So it's a really deep dive, intensive session where we're in a really big space of approval around who we are as sexual beings, and allowing that to sort of blossom and emerge. And I hold a very sacred space for that. And then it's really for people who, like you and I, are on that awakening path, right? People who have done some work in personal development and personal growth. So this is a very conscious decision for them to move forward. I think that's the short answer.
Okay, great. And so, what is conscious connection, and how do you help people create conscious connection in their lives?
Yeah, great questions. Um, Conscious connection to me is approaching, first of all, approaching everything that I do, my relationships particularly, right? My intimate relationships, and that doesn't mean just lovers, but there's all sorts of
Mm.
intimate relationships
Hmm.
that I have in my life, um, with my sovereign self. So I show up wholly as myself, right? I'm full and complete in that space. And what I think are really the characteristics of that, like when I can tell I'm showing up in sovereign self, is when I'm curious, compassionate, and playful.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so yeah, right? Like that's fun. It's fun to
Hmm.
play in that
Hmm.
space.
Yeah, those are
Um,
great qualities.
yeah, thank you. So that's primary. And then it's really being with what shows up in the present moment, and co-creating with the beings, right? The people who cross my path at any particular moment, right? As I'm present in my sovereign self, keeping things in that space, I can consciously co-create with them, right? So it's a choice. I'm not I think when we think of consciousness, sometimes it becomes this big, large, um, sort of esoteric concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I really think what it comes down to is on this awakening journey, we're all seeking liberation. Liberation is defined by, are we in choice? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always in choice. I am
Hmm.
not a victim of my circumstance. I am always in choice. So it's really co-creating with someone, my partner or partners in that space.
Hmm. And my understanding is that you use a little bit of kind of yogic and other spiritual techniques in your work and in your coaching. So, what's an example of this, and how do they work together?
Sure. Well, what I like to say about soul sex is it's cultivating conscious connection at the speed of intimacy. So it requires that I be mindful, right?
Mm.
So I have a sexuality practice, the 15-minute orgasm, that is really based on. It looks a lot like a vipassana meditation or insight meditation. That's a big part of my practice and what I'm willing to share with people as well. And I think it's important for your viewers to know and for you to know that all of my work is no hands on, right?
So, for
It's
in a workshop with you, there's nothing hands
it's
on.
there's no hands on. It's I create a safe and sacred space
Mm.
for people to have open discussion, right, around
Mm.
sex, sexuality, intimacy,
Mm.
and connection. So
Mm-hmm.
they can go play in their own space, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Um, I'm curious about what kind of reception you've gotten from yoga practitioners, because my feeling is that there's a lot of confusion in the yoga world about sexuality, and there's a lot of mixed messages. And I know, like, in my blogging and my work, I'm critical of the sexualization of how especially in advertising, right? But
sure.
I don't think that this sexualization is necessarily sex positive, right? Or a healthy thing. And I think that's why I'm so critical of it. And I just feel like there's mixed messages and there's confusion
Yeah.
and there's a really big discord, and I think there needs to be some space for discussion. So I'm just wondering what kind of reception you've received from people, if there's been any backlash or.
Great. Thank you so much for asking it. And thank you for bringing that topic to the forefront because I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's sort of a spillover from our culture and mainstream media of
Mhm.
over sexualizing
Yeah,
things, right? So spilling into this world, it doesn't feel good. It feels really messy.
yeah.
It feels inauthentic, and there's pieces of it that just, to me, feel yucky.
Hmm.
Um, so I agree with you. And I think the distinction is. Let me see how I would characterize this. I can own my sex and my sexuality, and that looks different for me than it does from anyone else. Like you have a unique expression of your sexuality. I have a unique expression of my sexuality. I don't want that to be fed from an outside source,
Mm.
right? Right? Like these yoga pants look, my ass look great, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah,
I'm looking good in down dog or whatever.
yeah.
And at the same time, um, I feel that yoga in itself is a place where it's an embodied practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I need to be aware. I want to be aware of my
Mm-hmm.
body in that space. And so when you were asking just a few moments ago too about the sort of the yogic relations here, I mean, one of the things that I suggest to clients is when they're moving sexual energy, they need to have a mindful movement practice.
Mm.
Yoga is a beautiful venue to move that energy for them to stay smoothed out and to stay clear and to stay clean. So I think um, it's kind of a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation for me. I think take your yoga as a container to move your life force energy,
Mm.
but don't take your sex and impose it on your yoga. I think
Mm.
that's the
Mm.
short answer for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's really that's great. That's a really good way of framing it, and I like the concision. And just in terms of reception from
Yes.
practitioners and teachers and stuff, has there been a backlash or concerns or whatever? Or.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me to address that. So I feel very blessed. I've been very well received in the yoga community. Generally, when I run public workshops, they are in uh, yoga studios, right? That environment is very conducive to the type of sacred container I'm creating. We set intention, right? We're in that space very consciously and intentionally, just like you would be for your yoga practice. So I've been welcomed. Um, And at the same time, there's been edges, right? There's a little bit of skepticism at first, like, who are you? What do you do? They want to be really clear that I'm not violating their sacred space. And I'm willing to take time to build that relationship to allow, there's some places the doors close. Yeah, no, not interested.
Mm.
Okay, no worries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't call it a backlash per se, but I
Right.
think it takes a lot more um, finesse and tenderness and compassion
Mm.
to move this work forward. So there's a lot of laying the groundwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
I work with people until they can really feel the authenticity. They can feel the motives. They can feel really what is driving this work. It's not the sex. Sex is a doorway. It's a means to an end. We're
Mm.
on the path to enlightenment, all of
Mm.
us, for
Yeah.
awakening,
Yeah.
liberation,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
you call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But this is from the bottom up, right?
Yeah.
Not from the top down.
Yeah.
It's
Bottom up.
yeah, yeah. I don't want to bash the ascetic path, but I believe we need both in order
Mm.
to really wake up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can I say something here?
Absolutely.
I had a teacher once who said to me, um, the path to enlightenment is through the root chakra.
Hmm.
I'll let that sit.
Okay. All right. I'd like to hear a little bit too about a little bit about how does one become a sex coach or an educator? Like, what is your kind of professional background, and how do you how do you do it? Where did it come
Yeah,
from?
yeah, thank you. That it's been for me a very serendipitous navigation. I was in higher education for 10 years. I was for about 5 years. I was in higher education for 10 years, working on my graduate degree, and then moved into administration and teaching. So that's my background, right?
Hmm.
And I also have been in the field of human development for 20 plus years. That's a path I've been on since I was 19 years old, doing volunteer work and really my heart in service to the humanity, the betterment of our world, like so many of us, right?
Hmm.
And it was, I love to use the Steve Jobs quote: "You can't connect the dots looking forward, but you can connect them looking backwards."
Hmm.
That was the ways he
Hmm.
described his own career, and I can feel that there was a lot of different. It was a very serendipitous navigation to get to this place, but my soul was calling me to do this work,
Hmm.
and um, the specifics of it were working with various teachers. After I left higher education, I knew I wanted to develop a private practice in coaching, so I went through the channels to gain that training
Hmm.
through the Coaches Training Institute out of San Rafael, California. And then I did additional work in mindful sexuality, also in San Francisco. And so I've had many teachers along the way, besides my own personal research. But when you have that drive within you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is my path. This is what I'm doing. So it's a passion. And like so many of us, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And that's really been my path.
Hmm. Interesting. So it's a little bit of it's a kind of a winding path, it seems, and
Yes.
you've run in kind of all different elements.
Yes.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
taking the time to talk with me, Jenny.
Oh,
It was
sure.
really it's yeah. I think that this is a conversation. I think that there's a lot of potential, and I think that it's a good conversation to be happening in the yoga community, because I think that the yoga community has a lot of healing to do around sex and sexuality, and a lot of self education and stuff. So thank you so much, and I'm just going to hit stop.